Hey guys, Sidewinder here for Community Starcraft 2. Today's video is going to be a Terran versus Terran special, and this is going to be something that you Terran players have probably seen a million times in your own matchups. This is going to be siege tank lines versus siege tank lines, and how you can win this battle if you wind up getting to this point. It can be really annoying in lower leagues because it feels like all you do is just sit here with your tanks and you don't really feel like anybody's getting anything done. So a lot of people will be like, okay, well he just has siege tanks, I have tanks too, I'll just move forward and we'll go and end this game right now. Arrgh. And yeah, this is what's going to happen if you try to move into siege tank lines. You're going to get obliterated. So that's one way to lose the siege tank battles. Let me kill the weak tanks. Well, I guess I'm going to wind up killing everything. Never mind. I want to get 10 tanks on each side every time, so that's what, 6. I think that's enough. So these tanks are a little weak, but whatever. I'm going to show you guys different ways you can break these tank lines if you wind up getting yourself into this situation. This is going to be if you're running basically tank Viking versus tank Viking, and that's a lot of times you'll get into that situation. Let's say you have 10 tanks and like 6 Vikings. Let me put out the tanks and Vikings for the other player. And finally the Vikings. Ready to plunder. 10 tanks, 6 Vikings. The way that you can usually win these fights is if you have the ability to gain a spotting advantage. So what I mean by that is if you have tanks here, let's take a look at the blue player's tanks. His vision only goes, or rather his range on this tank only goes out to these lines. But you can actually only fire to about right here, considering you do not have vision of it. And I know it's kind of a bad example to show this. Let's take a look at this tank. This tank can fire this far, but he can only see this far. So if you have a spotting advantage on your opponent, then you can slowly move in with your units, with your tanks, and be able to outrange them. So let me go ahead and have these tanks unsieged. So if you find a way to win this air battle, let's just get these Vikings out of the way and say you've already won the air battle. You will now have a spotting advantage, and you can advance slowly and take position away from your opponent. So if you can see where this tank's vision lies, his range goes out to right there. We're going to walk slightly into the range, and right now they're both in each other's range, but they can't fire. But once you move one of your Vikings up, you can fire and he can't fire back. So for example, if you did that on like 2 or 3 tanks, and you could slowly advance like this if you have a spotting advantage with your Viking. And then it becomes the fact that he just can't fire back because you have better vision than he does. So right now those tanks are all out of range. We're just going to move up and re-siege. As you can see, they're now in range, and again, he does not have vision, so I can hit him, but he can't hit me. So that's one way to win the tank versus tank fights if you wind up getting in that situation. We're going to show you guys something a little bit different. Let me research all of the attack upgrades here.
Research.
Even Reaper speed, yeah. So we're going to show if you guys are running something like Marine Marauder, the way that you can win these fights as well. Start leapfrogging these tanks up just a little bit. If you're running something like Marine Marauder, along with Medevacs, we'll put out a whole bunch of Marine Marauder forces. And we're going to break the red tank line this time with this force. And show you guys first off that just running these units into there is a really bad idea unless you know you have them outnumbered. So we need to actually a few more Marauders. That's too many Marines.
It's go time.
And we'll put out a few Medevacs as well.
Ready for dust off.
So let's say you find yourself in this situation. You find yourself where he has a whole bunch of tanks, and you only have Marine Marauder. You cannot engage this. I'll show you what happens if you think you can engage it, and the answer is that you'll die horribly because he just has too damn many tanks. So you run up there and you're just going to go, oh yeah, and you're just going to chug right through your Marine Marauder, and you're going to take out only a few tanks. So that's a terrible idea. If you're running Marine Marauder, do not do that. You're going to lose everything. And he only lost like, less than half of his tanks. So let's put out 5 more tanks. In the event that you get somebody running mech against you when you're running Marine Marauder, you need to accept that mech, and especially tanks, are very slow. So if this is the enemy base over here, whoops, I think we actually have too many tanks. Let's get these out of here.
Give us your best shot. What's our target?
Yeah, it looks like that's enough. So you have to accept that if they're demanding position like this, they don't have anything at home. Whereas you have a much mobile force, so you can make him pay for being completely out of position. So if you're making a whole bunch of units here, we'll make a few Medevacs. You can make it. You have the advantage in this fight if you can make these tanks unsiege. But you can also do stuff like backdoor drops and just put them completely out of position. You obviously usually wouldn't want to drop this much, so we'll just unload all these. Tab, tab, unload. So if he's way back here, then you can just go right around him, go right into his base, and just start dropping and make him move. So if you're running Marine Marauder, your best chance of winning here is not to engage those tanks while they're sieged. But the alternative is that, let's say you drop off a bunch of stuff over here, you still have some forces right here, and then if you have your command center hotkeyed, which you definitely should, let's say he notices the drop, and he's like, uh-oh, get these guys out of the way. So let's say he notices the drop, he's going to lose all this stuff if he doesn't come back home and deal with this. So let's say his reaction is, well, uh-oh, I need to go ahead and unsiege and attack that. But if you're back at home, you scan this tank line and you see him unsiege, you can just stim up, get in there, and you should be able to win this fight pretty easily. So there, you just turned a battle in which your whole army would get obliterated for basically nothing into a battle that you won because you can make his tanks unsiege and run home to deal with a drop like this. So if you can get those tanks to unsiege, you're going to win the tank versus tank wars a lot. Let me put out a whole bunch more Marauders and Marines. And let me recreate the tanks here and show you guys another way that you can break that. That's actually too many tanks. Let's pull these ones back. The other thing you guys can do, which is a little more obscure, is if you get late enough with Marine Marauder, you can actually research a nuke. So we're going to go ahead and put a nuke out, and one ghost.
Ghost reporting. Okay.
Let's put all your units up here just like before. These tanks back here and siege them. So again, if you run in here, you're going to die. You cannot afford to do that, but the thing about a nuke is that it has the same range as a siege tank. So you can, if you scan over his army, you can see basically what his range is. You can start clicking on your enemy's units and see what the range is. So if you sit your ghost like right here, there's no way those tanks can hit you, but you can nuke close enough to those tanks so that he's going to have to unsiege or just lose them all. And this is just another way to make him unsiege. So if you have your bio on standby here, you launch a nuke, he can't just stand there and eat the nuke because he's going to lose a ton of tanks. So we're going to go ahead and nuke, and more than likely if he notices the nuke, he's going to be like, oh crap, I need to unsiege, and you can just go, surprise, stim, and run in there, and you can also just cancel the nuke so you don't blow yourself up, and run back home. So that's another way you can definitely break siege tank lines. If it is siege tank lines that you're having a lot of trouble with, if you're running tank versus tank, you need to understand that you can break lines if you have a spotting advantage. You can use nukes like this as well and just make them move back over and over and just continually take over territory. But the other thing that people don't really understand very much in this matchup is that if you're running tank versus tank, you need to understand why. And the reason why is because you're eating position. You just own position if you have tanks in that point. So let's say this ramp, let's say the Terran player is worried about protecting that ramp. So let's put out like a bunch more tanks. Put out 6 tanks to make this 10 once again. Let's say he's really worried about taking this position. If there's some way that you're running tanks as well, let me just die all these units really quick. Just trying to get rid of that army here real quick. Stop healing medevacs. Let me put out extra tanks from the side. So if you're running tank versus tank once again, and you can't somehow get a spotting advantage, but you just still want to take over territory, we need one more tank. You need to basically outposition him so that you can get an inside track into his base. So, jeez, taking forever to get all this stuff up here. So let's say he sieged right here, but there's still another opening over to his base that you can abuse if there's some way that you can get your stuff over there. So let's say we have that same ghost and nuking composition and whatever that you might have in the late game. We'll bring the ghost over here. We'll be sieged right here. And you want to get here. You want to get here and into his base. You need to find a way to demand that position. So if you take your ghost and you nuke, oops, we need to make a new nuke.
Nuclear missile ready.
Let's say you nuke like, whoops, so we don't want to lose that. Let's say you nuke right here. You're going to force these tanks, whoops, jeez, that didn't work out. Bad positioning there on the ghost.
Nuclear missile ready.
So So let's say you get up in this position and you want to take this position. You need to nuke somewhere in that area or find a way to take over that position so that he will not be able to deal with that. You can see this tank's range once again. You don't want to enter that range. So let's go ahead and just nuke right here in front of his tanks. And these tanks are going to be like, oh crap, now I need to get out of here. Meanwhile, your tanks can be moving at the same time and make it so that if he doesn't move out of that nuke range, he's going to lose a lot of stuff. But again, you can cancel it if you need to, or you can just let it land if you want to. It doesn't matter. Now all of a sudden, look at where his army is. You can start running stuff in because his siege tank fire doesn't actually hit this ramp. So you now have the inside track into his base to start destroying structures or destroying mining or whatever. So you need to understand why you're getting into tank versus tank battles and understand what the point of it is. So nukes are a great way to break it. Marine Marauder drops are a good way to break it. Spotting advantages are a good way to break it. You can also do really super tricky stuff like dropping mules on top of their tanks. So let's say I scan over these. I can drop mules right in the middle of these tanks and make them fire at the mule and hurt themselves. If you have enough command centers and it's late enough in the game, that's really worth it. You obviously want to use your mules to mine minerals, but late in this super late game Terran versus Terran, you should hopefully have tons of extra command centers so that you can just dump SCVs and put more supply into your army. But if you're stowing up mules and you don't want to mine, if you have a ton of minerals or whatever, excuse me, you can just drop mules on top of his army and make him shoot his own tanks. So that's definitely another way you can break it. You can see we've killed a tank without spending anything. We've only spent energy on it. So yeah, that's another tricky way you can do it. You can also do stuff like Raven play, or eventually late enough, if you could just put out a couple of Banshees and maintain air control, then you can take out his tank lines quite a bit as well. Let me just demonstrate that really quickly. Put out like 3 or 4 Banshees. Of course, this is a lot of Banshees. You should in this anyway if you're that far in. Where are his Vikings? So let's say he has too many tanks. Let's say he has like, I mean these are effectively cost supply equal armies. Let me rally him over here so they don't die. Let's say you have this few amount of tanks, you obviously can't straight up engage, but he also can't straight up engage you. If you can find a way to get Banshees out, then you'll just take over that, and if you have a Raven especially, you can drop a point defense drone and basically make it so that their Vikings can't fire. And then once that battle commences, whoops, you're going to die if you walk that way. Once that battle commences, then you're going to have a huge advantage considering he can't hit a lot of your Vikings, but you can hit all of his. Or even if you just have more Vikings, let's just do this for the sake of time. Put out 3 more Vikings. Whoops, we're actually maxed. Here, you guys kill yourself. There you go. Okay, so let's say you just have a few Banshees. He still has a decent amount of Vikings, but he's over-invested in the tanks. You can start running Sky Terran like we're seeing here. Come in here, start attacking. If you just drop a point defense drone in the middle, you're going to intercept a ton of his shots, and your stuff just will not take that much damage. And all of a sudden, he has a bunch of stuff on the ground that just can't shoot back at your Banshees. So your Banshees are going to easily clear this out. They're going to have no competition. The tanks are probably going to be like, oh crap, we need to run home. We need to find a better place to hide from this. But look how many free tank kills you're getting, and you haven't lost any of your tanks. All of a sudden, you can take over position once again, re-siege, and just take over his base if you wind up getting that far. So there's a lot of different ways that you can take this over. So just be creative, use your imagination. Obviously use the stuff that I've been showing you in this video if you're having a lot of trouble breaking siege tank lines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions in particular, just post a comment down below. I usually answer as many as I possibly can. And I'm just going to talk one more little thing about handling tanks. You can queue up your sieges via holding shift and giving them commands. So if you want this tank to move here and then siege, you just click there to tell him to move, hold shift, and then click your hotkey for it, and he'll siege as soon as he gets there. So if you need to practice leapfrogging your tanks, for example, you can just select a couple, tell them to move forward, re-siege via the shift queue, and they'll just move up and re-siege on their own. So yeah, just a couple of other helpful things that you can do if you're trying to work on your tank leapfrogging. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Have a nice night, and I will see you guys later.